it seemed like no matter how terrible the anti-Second Amendment efforts got, the Supreme Court didn't take much up. And ever since they took the Kerry case, New York Rifle and Pistol Club versus Bruin, and they ruled that American citizens have the right to carry outside their home, anti-Second Amendment efforts have doubled down big time. So there's more and more cases making their way to the Supreme Court. And one that's they just agreed to pick up, that they will try, is in regards to international relations with the United States. And ultimately what this revolves around is a lawsuit from Mexico suing gun manufacturers, specifically Smith & Wesson, for arming their cartel. Now, obviously, Smith & Wesson did not do that. What they're referring to is people are coming to the U.S. and they're making straw purchases, and then they're bringing them down to Mexico and selling them to the cartel or giving them to the cartel, however that works. Obviously, Smith & Wesson isn't selling it to them. It's really kind of like if somebody got in a car and decided to just drive through a crowd of people and kill as many people as they could. And then instead of going after what that problem is, you go after Chevrolet or Honda or whatever, whoever made that car. So I believe what's taking place here is internationally, the world looks at the U.S. in a peculiar way when it comes to our gun culture. As I have traveled around the world in my brief travels, every now and then it comes up what I do for a living, and typically people look at me like I'm crazy when I tell them I do a YouTube channel called God, Family, and Guns, and then they immediately start kind of hammering on the gun culture in America. So I've kind of learned just to, like, I have a couple sentences I share that kind of tries to shut them down, but and it usually revolves around, well, why don't you come to the U.S. with your kids and walk around the streets and send them off to school and see if you don't want to carry again. But anyhow, that's not the point. But there's this census that around the world, countries are beginning to blame America for their gun crime. Mexico being an example of that. And now that the Supreme Court is going to take up this case, I believe what it's going to do is it's going to blast a giant hole in the hopes that other countries have, that they can hold the U.S. gun manufacturers accountable when they really need to hold themselves accountable. The cartel problem in Mexico has nothing to do with Smith & Wesson. It has to do with some issues that they're needing to deal with. And because they can't handle it, they're going to start pointing the blame at other people, like the gun manufacturers. And I believe the rest of the world is going to begin to kind of take note of that and see what happens depending on what the Supreme Court does. Now, what I strongly believe they're going to do is they're going to say you have no legal bounds to sue Smith & Wesson or any of the other gun manufacturers on your list. So that's kind of why I think it's going to kind of blast a giant hole in what countries around this world think they can and cannot do when it comes to American guns. So I look forward to this case. I'm very excited that they're taking this up. I honestly didn't think it'd make it this far, but I believe in a good way it is good, because Smith & Wesson has been having to spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars defending themselves against Mexico. So what this will do is it'll prevent that problem for other people coming from, or other gun manufacturers coming from other countries. It'll, like if all of a sudden somebody in Brazil decides to sue Glock or something, Glock USA, they won't be able to, and they'll kind of stop before they start, because the problem with getting sued is you still got to defend yourself, so still costs a ton of money, and I believe that's gonna put this to a halt. So there you go, U.S. Supreme Court taking up this case, Mexico versus Smith & Wesson and a few others that you've been hearing about for quite a while. And I do want to add that it is against the law in America to sue gun manufacturers for gun crime. So I think that's a gigantic piece of why this isn't going to work. Maybe Mexican attorneys don't realize that. But in the end, this is going to blast a giant hole in how other countries feel about holding us accountable for their crime and their gun violence. I believe it's going to put an end to it. So there you go. Any thoughts or insight on that? Definitely put it below. Do want to take a moment and say the most people watch the channel, hey, they're not subscribers. Click that subscribe button. Greatly increases the algorithm and our ability to get these messages out. That link is also below. But the most important part of this channel, we take prayer requests. So please don't ever hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, love guns.